Gacha games. Games that will squeeze you for every last penny you're worth. I've played, not that many gacha games, to be honest, but I've played 4 of the bigger ones, sinking over 50 hours into each, except Manless Moan Hero, which just came out recently. Today, I will compare and contrast 4 of the largest gacha games currently out. We'll just ignore a couple other larger gacha games, okay? Now, first of these is Uwu-Shin. The first, the original, and perhaps the worst. But it wasn't always that way. When Hentai Shin came out, it was truly revolutionary. For a free game, it offered something nothing had before. And it came out at the perfect time. When everyone was at home, when everybody had nothing to do, everything went right. Everybody was playing girl Shin. Grandmas were buying iPads to play gay Shin. Pregnant women were putting phones into their vaginas to let their newborns play. It was a great time to be alive. But then Pension looked at Apple and thought, we're at the top. Why do we need to improve? And the quality of the updates and the content fell faster than Dr. Disrespect subcount. Every update got worse and worse and worse and worse. Genshin had no competition, and it needed not to improve. But soon this would all change. A light shines through, a beam of gold. It was Honkai Starbucks. Made by the same company, it offered waifus, story, and gacha. And when it came out, boy was it good. The story was amazing, the characters were amazing, but there were still those who clinged to their old self, their old game, saying that it was better, that it was more fun, that it was perfect no matter what Honkai did. But then, Henkai did something unspeakable, the absolute impossible, the ratio incident. Hentai basically cornered Gushin and did what the mailman does to your mother every night. Fucked and impregnated was porn Shin. Yet even after all this, Jerk Shin was not done. For their 3-year anniversary, they gave out 3 wishes. 3 wishes. The sad thing was that it was the only game that offered a great open world and amazing exploration, and unfortunately, Horny Derailed did not offer such. By this time, it felt like the Hoyoverse ruled the gacha space. They were the only ones to have the international market at their knees. But this soon changed. Out of the blue arose a new enemy. Kuro Games presented their newest product, Wuthering Ways. It offered everything Genshin did, but better. Combat? Yeah. Exploration? Oh, men. Yeah. Waifus? Ooh. Gacha. Oh boy. This game basically watched as Honkai-kun raped Genshin-chan and was about to help, but instead raped them both by accident. It was better in every regard, and guess what? The compensation is the game was outstanding. The amount of free things they gave was insane. No other game could compare. I mean, this is just insanity. Oh, and what did they do for 1.1? They gave you 30 free wishes. But it wouldn't take long for the trio to become a quartet. Genhit had now carried Honkai's child and brought it into the world. The weird abomination from their step-cousin action. Hairless Horn Honey. Hentai Bone Money was a weird and abominable game, but it was fun. The story was overly dragged out and the combat was brain dead simple, but it was a fun experience nonetheless. But enough with history. You didn't come for that, did you? You want the comparison. So before we start the comparison...
Disclaimer. It is impossible to compare each game one-to-one because each game has a different target audience and even more of a different identity. Each game has a different style and each of its components for better or for worse, and therefore these ratings do not necessarily reflect how you feel about the game. Remember that all these are subjective and you may like something that is objectively worse for one reason or another. Just like people use Apple over Android or Windows over Linux, will listen to pop and mumble rap instead of classical music.
Let's look at Genshin first, since it was the first. It offers a decent story with completely horrible storytelling that is often dragged out and overexplained. If you're a fan of storytelling, well, Genshin's like a 6 out of 10. The combat in Genshin feels like you and your buddy are just having an eraser fight. It's weird, sloppy, and jumpy. Probably like a 4 out of 10. But what Genshin is often hailed for is its absolutely stunning open world and exploration. Well, the world is certainly out there. It has amazing places, epic views, but it does feel a bit overly playful and childish with its saturation and overall world design. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a solid 7 out of 10. But when it comes to exploration, I will have to disappoint. Not only are some of the puzzles in the game made for people with 7 doctorates, but if you're in Inazuma, you're probably going to receive a common chest for it. Exploration with Genshin is horribly ruined and riddled by puzzles that only absent-minded people would even think to check. And with the rewards that Genshin gives for its exploration, I can only give Genshin a 6 out of 10. Let's talk characters and gacha. The characters are probably some of the best you will see in any gacha game. They're extremely vibrant, well-designed, like Ayaka, but okay, honestly, half the characters look like NPCs. I mean, look at this. But with how long the game has been out for, it has amassed an extremely large array of characters, so you will definitely find somebody who you like, and some that just look mid. I'll give this a 8 out of 10. The gacha in the game has become the industry standard for all gacha games, essentially, with the normal 80 pity, 50-50, and a terrible weapon banner. And with how long it takes to get a 10 pull in this game, the gacha really just sucks. I have to give this a 4 out of 10. Now we go to the end game content. 2 out of 10. Now there's this extra point called the gacha point, which is essentially just a rating for all the gacha aspects. Weekly bosses, the grindy stuff, the stamina system, artifacts, UI, basically everything that doesn't fall into the other categories. What I would like to point out is the stamina system in Genshin, which is one of the worst of all 4 games. Yeah, sure, they updated it to 200, but like, okay. What really does that change? Oh, and also character materials having specific days of availability. Why? Oh, and the events in the game are dog shit. Otherwise, everything else is pretty good, and I don't have any super large concerns. 6 out of 10. The final rating of the game, rounded, is 5 out of 10. Genshin is definitely catered more toward children who need a lot of explanation on what is happening in the story, and don't really care about the quality of the content itself. It's an alright game, but until the devs cook something up with Natlan, I doubt the game will thrive nearly as much as it used to, with the current remaining community composed of only those who cannot leave because of all the money they've sunk into the game. Next up is Honkai Star Rail. Honestly, when I first tried this game, I didn't like it, but I soon came to the realization of just how good this game is. It offers an alright story with amazing storytelling, great characters, and a very fun combat system. Now, of course, if you're not into turn-based games, well, yeah, the game's not for you. But if you are, the story is a solid 9 out of 10, and the combat is a 7, provided, again, you like turn-based combat. Now, unfortunately, Honkai does not have a big open world with lots of treasures. There are still places you can explore, so I will still judge it based on this. The maps in the game are small, but lively. There's a lot of stuff going on, and unlike Genshin's oversaturated world with vibrant colors and happy tones, beside a few spots, Honkai keeps the world in a small yet well-crafted manner. The world is very well designed and kept realistic. I mean, just look at Bellabog. Please, that thing is beauty. I'll give the world an 8 out of 10 for what it is, and the exploration is a 7. The fact that it even exists in the game is actually quite surprising. But do keep in mind that, unlike in Genshin, the exploration of an area takes at most 15 to 30 minutes. Whereas in Genshin, you really have a lot to do. Gacha characters are also something the game is just amazing in. There's a lot less characters that look like NPCs, but they do sometimes feel like bland and boring. I know I'm gonna get so much hate for saying this, but look at Acheron. She is the most bland and basic, but she seems to be one of the most hailed characters ever. Nevertheless, the characters are just ever so slightly better than in Genshin, but Because of the smaller array of characters, I will have to give this game just the same 8 out of 10 that Genshin has. The gacha is better than Genshin, since it gives you much more rewards and a 75% chance of getting the light cone instead of Genshin's 37.5. Otherwise, the gacha is just a mirror copy of what is in Genshin. So it will get just a slightly higher 5 out of 10 from me. The endgame content is there. It is fun. It's not the most outstanding endgame, but hey, there's stuff to do. Unlike in Genshin, 7 out of 10. The gacha point gets a 9 out of 10. I think it was a great idea to add a separate stamina system, so if a player hasn't played in a while, he doesn't feel like he has been held back by coming back to the game after all this time. All these points give the game an average of 7.5, rounded to 8 out of 10. Now keep in mind, Genshin and Honkai are still completely different games, and comparing them 1-to-1 isn't exactly fair, since one offers the same features in a different way, and therefore they can't be judged 1-to-1. Honkai is definitely more tailored to those Pokemon or other trading card game fans. If you think about it, Honkai is just a card game with 3D sprites in a semi-open world with quests. It's certainly tailored for the more patient and strategical players. But fourth comes the big guns. Wuthering Waves. My favorite gacha game. I'm gonna disclose that immediately, but I'm going to be as fair as possible when judging it, okay? So I'll try to keep my bias out the window. So starting off with the story. It's alright, just like most gacha games, and it doesn't reach for the stars, but it doesn't fall completely into oblivion. The storytelling, on the other hand, there's some great parts. Scar, Jinsei, but whenever Yang Yang's there, it falls straight into the abyss. Part of the reason is the horrendous voice acting. I mean, oh my goodness. Until they retroactively fix the voice acting, I cannot possibly give this game anything more than a 7. But the story gets better, and by the end, it's actually amazing. Don't get me wrong, the first 30 minutes of the version 1.1 quests are just a Paimon flashback, but at least the conversation with Abby at the start is thousands of times better than anything I've had with this flying meatball. But overall, at this point, the storytelling is either a 1 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, depending on where you look. So for now, I will give it a final rating of a 6 out of 10 because it is slightly better than it is bad, but it depends. The combat is where this game really shines. The combat is very complicated, but it's also simple enough for those simpletons who just like to go and click buttons and kill stuff. It's the type where you can get straight into the nitty-gritty if you want, or you can just do the basic stuff, and it works. I do have some very minor gripes with certain aspects, but they are so minor that they have little bearing on the game, so it's a solid 9 out of 10. Now, the world and exploration is honestly the best of all gacha games. Genshin players often called the world out for like the lack of saturation, not realizing that it's actually their game's problem with how oversaturated everything is. But even if you don't like the saturation, just like go into your monitor settings and raise the saturation. The world is definitely an 8 of 10, and this is amplified because of the movement of the game. I can get from any point to another point in at most 10 minutes. In Genshin, yeah, good luck climbing to freaking Dragon Spine without the TP. Wish you the best. And the exploration is a 9 out of 10. It doesn't have any of those mind-blowingly complex puzzles that Genshin is riddled with, and the rewards for the exploration are stunning. Hey, it's Genshin, let me give you 10 Primo Gems for the best chest in-game. Oh hey, I'm Wuthering Waves, I'll give you 5 Astrite for the simplest chest to find. And up to 40 for the more complex ones. I think. It might be 20, correct me if I'm wrong. But overall, the exploration is just much more rewarding and much more simple and fun. The characters are there, and some are absolutely stunning, like Jian and Jinsei. But the overall amount of them is, I mean, quite low. It's just a new game. What can you expect? And I will comment that most of the women in the game are just okay. They're just there. They're not amazing. They're not crazy. They're just there. The characters are a solid 7 out of 10. Definitely gonna get better with time, but we'll still have to see what Kuro cooks up. The new characters that they've shown teasers of kind of look mid, but the girl's design is kind of growing on me, I don't know. The gacha is the best in all games. You have a literal guarantee for weapons. And the fact that there's currently 1 banner is better than 2, but I bet that's probably gonna change as the game goes on, so I don't know. And look, I can give the game like a 10 out of 10 for the fact that I got 2 GNs, and then a panda girl and 40 pulls, and then like freaking Jinsei won the 50-50, then I also got her weapon and literally 20 pity, but I'm not gonna do that, okay? 7 out of 10. The endgame content is an 8 out of 10. It's definitely worse than Honkai, but again, a bit too early to judge. It's not like anybody's currently at the endgame either. There's the hologram bosses that are still there to fight, and the Tower of Adversity, and the little thing, the door that transports you into another realm, like the simulated universe. They're there. They're fun. They're cool. The gacha point is probably a 9 out of 10 because there's just literally nothing for me to complain about. I just have nothing to say at all. Overall, a 7.875 out of 10, rounded to 8 out of 10. Wuthering Waves is truly an outlier of gacha games. It has a lot of a darker atmosphere than most of the popular, saturated, poppy gachas, and it works. It also feels like it's tailored toward the PC community rather than the phone community. The difficulty of the hologram fights is insane, and I doubt anybody can beat it on a phone. And if you have, please take a shower. The game suits the hardcore players a lot more than the little kids that just like poppy and vibrant colors. No offense. So long as the game continues in its current path and fixes the horrible voice acting, oh my god, the game will truly prosper and remain a competitor in this equation. But finally, Zenless Zone Zero is like the weird cousin of Honkai and Genshin. Actually not probably, the most vibey game on this list. I'd just like to say that I've barely played, so I cannot fully judge Zenless Zone Zero, so the ratings here will have an asterisk. So the story felt a bit dragged out. It didn't feel entertaining listening to the cutscenes for hours. The little comic book style ones were great, but the normal ones were just so boring and uninteresting. Similar to Wuwa, the story is just either a 1 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, depending where you're looking. For now, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. The combat feels bland, but it works for the simple style of the game. ZZ feels like it's more of a casual game where you play once in a while when bored. The simple combat works for that. But if you want to play this game like hardcore, the combat will get boring very quickly. So for that, I'll give like a 6 out of 10. The world is probably one of the better ones here. Again, like Honkai, the world is small but lively. It feels really cozy and really vibey, with gorgeous aesthetics and views. The exploration is also there no matter how simple it is. I will give the world a solid 8 out of 10, and exploration like a 5 out of 10. There's a lot less chests to explore than in Honkai. But I have a serious problem with the characters in this game. Sure, it's new, but they are so terrible it hurts. The current lineup has no interesting characters at 5 stars. The 4 stars have some somewhat interesting and unique characters, but the 5 stars are either furries or this abomination. Belle, the main character, is designed better than all other characters in the game, and that says a lot. 3 out of 10. The game has standard gacha. 5 out of 10. I don't think the game has any endgame content yet, and it's a bit too early to judge on that. Plus, if it sticks to the idea of a casual gacha game, then it probably doesn't even need an endgame. And plus, I haven't made it to the end game, so I won't be judging it for that. This point, just forget this point exists for this game. The gacha point is probably going to have to be a 9 out of 10. The vibe of the game is superb, and it really is the highlight of the game. It's gorgeous. This all averages out to 5.85714285714 out of 10. Rounded to 6 out of 10. Again, I didn't play this game a lot, so keep that in mind. This game feels like it's meant to be played once in the blue moon when you're just really bored and have nothing to do. The game really doesn't feel like it's made to be played every day, and definitely feels more like a phone game than a PC game. It also feels like you're playing a visual novel for the first like 3 hours, which kind of sucks. I'd much rather prefer to play an actual visual novel than this. Why did I say novel? novel. But I'm certain the game will have its own community and its own profit, however much that be. Again, keep in mind, these games are quite different, and so the rankings and judgments are just kind of weird. So that was it. That was the big four, and hopefully I did a good job highlighting the pros and cons of each. Unless it's Genshin, which doesn't have any pros. Comment down below and tell me your stupid opinions that don't even compare to mine. And yes, I still haven't learned how to make outros.